Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. About a week ago I participated in the GMTK 2022 Game Jam. This was the second time I had ever done a 48-hour jam. The first time was Ludum Dare 50, which didn't go quite as well as I'd hoped, but it was a huge learning experience. Going into GMTK 2022, I teamed up with DaforLynx, a musician and fellow jammer that I had worked with in the past. Also, be sure to check out his Bandcamp, links are in the description. The plan was simple. He would make the music and sound effects, and I would code the gameplay. Neither of us would make any art, because art sucks and it's too time consuming. Instead, we decided to use simple shapes with a nice color palette. The jam officially started and the theme was revealed. Roll of the dice. While I'm definitely not a big fan of randomness, physical dice can be pretty cool. So I tried to channel every ounce of positive energy towards dice that I had and brainstorm some ideas. Here's what I came up with. A strategic clicker game where you roll dice and have to buy the best upgrades to maximize your odds. A 2D platformer where you play as a die and every time you jump you roll a random number, each giving a different effect. A puzzle game where you have to roll your die across a course with each move rotating to a different face. A game with lots of dice rolls, but you can go back in time knowing what the dice will roll. A game where you have to manipulate RNG like you are making a tool-assisted speedrun. Or a sequel to my best game yet, Coin Flip Simulator. But in the end, we decided to go with this idea. An Undertale-style boss fight, but after each wave of attacks, you attack the boss by rolling a bunch of dice. But each time before you attack, you get to choose one of 3 random cards that will make you stronger by adding dice and giving multipliers to your rolls. I hoped that this game would really capture that feeling of epicness that you get when you roll a bunch of dice in a board game, and then you get to count up all your special abilities and modifiers and do tons of damage. I started by first creating the attack dodging part of the game. My plan was to have the player movement and boss attacks done by the end of the first day, so I could spend the entire next day on the player's attack system, and bringing everything together. With the player movement done, I moved on to the boss attacks. I decided that the best way to handle the attacks was to use animations to control the boss's movement and use animation events to make it shoot projectiles. I started with a simple swooping attack, a stabbing motion, and a dice dropping attack. I tried to make the beginning of each attack distinct so that the player could memorize what area each attack would cover and move out of the way instead of just having to react super fast every single time. That's a trick I learned from Elden Ring, whilst fighting the Tree Sentinel for 3 hours. The next attack I worked on was probably the most important. In this attack, the boss rolls a die to the side, and when it stops rolling, it fires all of its dots at the player one at a time. I thought this was an interesting way to have the boss's attacks really incorporate the theme. But the attack is also designed so that the die fires during other attacks, adding to the difficulty. Just dodging these 4 attacks was kind of fun, but the boss needed more. So I added big dice, a circling attack, and a quick X-shaped attack. Now these were great, but the boss still needed something more. After a while of thinking of what the boss should do for its final attack, I had an idea. Yeah, this one's definitely my favorite. The last thing I did before the end of the day was build some basic logic for giving the boss 3 phases and have each phase use different attacks. I started the second day of the jam by working on the player attack system, and by 1 PM I had finished the basic gameplay loop. The boss would attack the player a few times, then the player can buy one of 3 cards. Then the player gets to roll all of their dice and have the cards modify the results and apply bonuses. Then all of those dice deal the damage they rolled to the boss. Now what's crazy to think about is that at this point, all of the major gameplay was essentially finished. Comparing the game as it is here to the final result really shows how important polish and playtesting is. After adding a bunch of new cards and a new dice type for the player, I adjusted the card size and added hearts to the corners, added arrow keys as a control option, gave the camera a vignette, made a dynamic main menu, made the boss wobble constantly, added screen shake, gave the player particle effects and a blinking effect when damaged, gave the player a health bar that goes around the box, gave the boss a health bar, gave the boss a phase switch animation, animated the player's cards and dice, added a pop-up to tell you when you got more dice, made the boss wait less time in between attacks and later phases, gave the boss a death effect, and finally added an ending to the game. And after some crucial feedback from my teammate, I also adjusted the speed of the player's attack, making it feel less sluggish, and also fixed some bugs I had missed. While I had been working on the gameplay for the past 2 days, DaforLynx had been busy composing 2 whole music tracks for the game and making all the sound effects. Finally, adding audio to the game was a huge improvement, and with a few more tweaks, the game was finally finished. All that was left to pick a name. After brainstorming for a solid 30 seconds, I came up with the following. Roll of the dice. Duel of the dice. Duel of the suits. Roll of the cards. Of decks on dice. Of hearts on spades. Deal of the fates. To the die. And dealing of the die. I sent them over to my teammate and he said of decks and dice was definitely the best. With that decided, I created a thumbnail, finished the itch page, uploaded the game files, and submitted the game with over an hour to spare. All that was left was to sit back, wait for people to rate the game, and hope that there aren't any major bugs that I missed. Crap.